Did you know a philosopher accidentally predicted the internet in the year 1791? And he did it through contemplating the idea of the perfect jail. Well, not exactly. But they weren't similar because of their mean spirits and mob mentality that both the prison and the internet share. But instead, they're similar because the prisoners never knew they were being watched. And neither do you. Let me set the stage. Jeremy Bentham was a philosopher, economist, and the father of modern utilitarianism. While he didn't actually predict the internet, his ideas of what the perfect prison would be are scarily similar to what the internet and mass surveillance have become. The prison was a circular, glass roof structure with external walls facing toward a dark observation tower. Guards of the tower could potentially observe any inmate they choose to at any moment, but the prisoners never knew whether or not they were being watched. Their constant fear of being watched is what manipulated them into acting how the prison would want them to. The mechanism of social control where individuals regulate their own behavior is called panopticism. The term panopticism was coined by French philosopher Michel Foucault and comes from the name of Jeremy Bentham's hypothetical prison, which I've described as a Panopticon. Panopticon comes from the Greek words pan, meaning all, and opticon, meaning seeing. All-seeing prison. Gradually, the prisoners would begin acting as they'd been being watched. And today, we are prisoners of panopticism. Let me explain. Today, corporations scrape every minute piece of information they can find about you. And most people willingly carry around a device that tracks where they go, what they buy, and even who they talk to. Whether you realize it or not, the mere perception of observation alters human behavior. And now, for the first time in human history, the observation never stops. Which poses a concerning question. What happens to people when they live under constant surveillance? When talking about privacy, most people say, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about, right? Right? Well, not exactly. According to the Markula Center of Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University, privacy isn't about doing right or wrong. You could be a law-abiding, great person and still want privacy. You see, I'm in my room now. Not because what I'm doing is wrong, but because privacy is strange. It allows people to express themselves without a performance. Privacy allows you to maintain autonomy, form relationship, and preserve your dignity. The things that make you, you. Without privacy, humans become performative, constantly wearing a mask. Imagine trying to learn, fail, and emotionally mature, all while on stage. You'd behave different. Everybody would. In another study done by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation based in Geneva, they surveyed over 5,000 young adults aged 16 to 24 across the globe. And when it asked to rank the importance of 10 human rights, the study showed that privacy is the most agreed upon important right. What I mean by this is that people consistently chose privacy as a very important right more than any others, because 88% of people surveyed agreed that privacy was very important. The other rights had a bit more discourse and disagreement when discussing their importance. And now, as companies start going from human surveillance to AI, the line between convenience and an invasion of privacy becomes increasingly blurry. Researchers for the National Library of Medicine examined how people behaved under AI surveillance compared to human. What they found was disturbing. People monitored by artificial intelligence were less comfortable, had a greater urge to resist, and even performed worse on cognitive tests. In the same study, when students were subjected to AI surveillance designed to detect cheating, they only had negative things to say. One student said, "I feel like I can't take a test in my natural state anymore because they're watching for all these movements. What I think is natural, they're going to flag." In fact, such cases are turning into full-fledged lawsuits and protests. I think when the student says, what I think is natural, they're going to flag, his insight is crucial. Because AI surveillance is different than human, because AI is cold and impersonal. AI just uses calculations to predict what the user wants to hear. While they don't have critical thinking or a thought process, they do adhere to the programmer's code. So if a company designs AI to catch cheating, it only knows the cheating it was trained on, because that's what AI does. They adhere to current beliefs and perpetuate misconceptions. So if companies program AI to detect cheating, they don't really use critical thinking to determine whether or not a person is cheating. The program only knows what the programmer expects a cheating student to do. While the method may be effective, you have to ask, but at what cost? Surveillance forces people to conform. While AI surveillance may prevent some forms of cheating, it also suppresses students' thoughts and emotions. So you may be wondering, how did we get to this point? How would our government, the people supposed to be protecting us, allow this to happen? How would companies like Google know more about me than I do? Well, such invasions of privacy did not happen overnight. What if I told you our society is a frog being boiled in hot water? Let me explain. There is an old analogy that when a frog is dropped in boiling water, they'll immediately jump out. But as the temperature rises, if you do it slowly enough, to the perfect point, the frog won't jump out until it's too late. Modern surveillance grew in a similar way. Companies slowly increase the amount of data they collect while offering their service in return. That's how social media works. Apps like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all free because they make money through user data that you agree to give away just by downloading the app. The data doesn't feel threatening because it's disguised as being convenient. While surveillance is threatening freedom at an alarming rate, this is nothing new. Companies and governments have been using surveillance for centuries. In 1895, just 19 years after the invention of the telephone, a former telephone worker came to the police with an idea. He suggested that to catch illegal activity, the police could wiretap people's home phones and intercept private conversations. Eventually, wiretapping was abused by officers. They stopped using wiretapping to catch criminals, but instead used it to listen to ordinary people's private conversations. And it wasn't until nearly a century later, in 1986, when the federal government passed the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, putting restrictions on wiretapping and electronic surveillance. But by then, it was too late. The damage had already been done. Surveillance technology was already fundamentally implemented into our society. But there's another problem. Many of the laws written to protect your fundamental privacy were drafted before smartphones, social media, and artificial intelligence ever even existed. The Fourth Amendment was written in 1791 to protect citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures, but the amendment was written in a time where a search meant going through someone's physical letters and possessions, ignorant to the scope of that modern technology has become. For a long time, courts relied on an interpretation called the third-party doctrine. This doctrine suggested that when you willingly share information with a company, you lose the expectation of privacy on such things. So law enforcement could access information stored by companies without a warrant. But now, in the modern world, avoiding giving away data is nearly impossible. This concern reached all the way to the Supreme Court in a 2018 case, Carpenter versus United States. The justices agreed that long-term data tracking is far more revealing than traditional phone records, meaning law enforcement now needs a warrant. The ruling showed that there may be hope. However, America is still a jumble of outdated laws, narrow rulings, and exceptions that don't account for the scale of modern data collection. Companies slowly increase the data they collect. In exchange, you can continue using their platform. This is the data collection cycle. So, if invasion of privacy is so bad, and data collection so bad, then why is it so common? Well, the answer is simple. It's because your behavior is profitable. Modern tech companies don't just sell products anymore, they sell you. The better companies can accurately predict consumers' every move, the easier it is to influence what they buy, what they watch, and even how they think. Every click, every pause, every time your location is pinged, you are watched.
This is the way it has to be. The first thing that made the internet run was an engine that ran off of users' data. Oftentimes though, the first version of a technology is not what's ultimately in the best interest of society. We're now running today's internet by still using the same type of engine we started with, and a byproduct of this approach is the spewing out of your private data all over the internet. Like air pollution, the damage this does is not immediately obvious, but in the long run, it wreaks havoc on our society and eventually becomes an existential threat.
One of the most famous examples of this happening is an incident that happened with Target. By using predictive algorithms and purchase patterns, Target was able to successfully identify a girl's pregnancy before even her own father knew. Not through any illegal means, matter of fact, but through patterns of surveillance. This is what many scholars call surveillance capitalism. Companies profit from human behavior. It shows just how much these corporations really know about you. It's easy to exchange comfort in exchange for privacy. What's fascinating is that it almost seems convenient. Convenience has an interesting characteristic. Once it's normalized, it doesn't feel intrusive. Conformity becomes natural, and convenience is quite unsettling. According to security researcher Bruce Schneier, surveillance changes the power balance between institutions and civilians. When people know that they might be being watched, they become less likely to question authority. Throughout history, surveillance has been used to suppress protests, journalists, and even minorities. Even when it may seem harmless for corporations such as Target to collect data, just to push some personalized ads, it is harmful. Companies don't just use your data for ads. They also sell it to data brokers. Data brokers are companies that collect personal information about individuals from public records, internet activity, and surveillance information. They then sell your information to insurance companies, employers, or even law enforcement agencies.
Information that's being volunteered on the internet. Take 5 Solutions, a data broker in Boca Raton, Florida, runs 17 websites like GoodParentingToday.com and T5HealthyLiving.com, where people can share stories about their families and health. What web visitors don't realize is that Take 5's real business is collecting and selling the information,
which then ups your prices. Governments use surveillance all the time. Governments often use surveillance to oppress certain groups. This is particularly prevalent now because of the Department of Homeland Security. If you don't know, the Department of Homeland Security has had significant breaches in privacy of U.S. citizens. By using their authority and surveillance, ICE creates a fear of authority that infringes on people's rights. These changes are hard to reverse because mass surveillance is already deep-rooted in our society. In March of 2025, a report from NPR revealed how the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have used a gigantic surveillance web by using AI facial recognition software. Immigration agents can simply scan any civilian's face by pointing a smartphone at them, and within seconds, the app scans your face, captures your biometric information, and cross-references it with government and commercial databases. This technology has already been abused on a large scale. There have been reports all over the country of ICE agents abusing information they have on innocent people. NPR reported on a girl named Emily. Emily has made it a routine to exercise her First Amendment right to record ICE officers. One evening in January, she was following an ICE vehicle legally at a safe distance when one of the officers leaned out of a car, took pictures of Emily in her car, Then after Emily saw this, she decided to leave. But as she was leaving, the ICE SUV made a U-turn, parked next to her driver's side window, and rolled down the window. When the female agent rolled down the window, she barked, "Emily! Emily! We're gonna take you home!" Emily didn't acknowledge the agents and just drove away. According to the report, ICE surveillance extends to social media. When speaking to social media creators with thousands of followers, their global entry status was revoked after making videos criticizing ICE. While this connection may be unclear, the administration's use of administrative subpoenas on tech companies isn't. The government has set subpoenas to companies like Google and Meta demanding personal information and to unmask anonymous accounts online. Typically, such subpoenas have been used to break down companies involved in serious cases, but now they are being used to threaten our First Amendment rights. Bentham's thought experiment does not resemble a prison any longer. Now it resembles our world, and in this world, your phone is both the oppressor and the one setting you free. So while companies having data might not seem to affect us in the short term, by the time you realize it's affecting us, it's already too late. Because as these companies learn more about the consumer, they gain the power to manipulate the unknowing. So whether you like it or not, being monitored means that your algorithm can push posts designed to make you mad. This means biased news and prices tailored to what the data says you're willing to pay. Ever notice that you're most likely to buy something at night? It's not an accident, it's by design. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it really fall? When you're alone and might be being monitored, are you really alone? So you might be wondering, how can I escape panopticism? What can I do? While it might seem impossible to escape the grasp and weight of perpetual observation, you can't. It pretty much is impossible. Really. It's impossible to stay off the grid now. But there are things you can do to prevent your personal information from being abused. Anytime a website asks for your cookies, asks for your data, you can click no. Using privacy browsers is also a good tool to ensure that your information is not taken. You can also support legislative pushes to put an end to legal loopholes allowing data brokers to sell your information to the highest bidder. Panopticism can only be fixed through collaboration and consistency. So while Bentham's never actually built his prison, I've shown you how we built a prison around ourselves. The goal of Panopticon was never to survey at all times. Jeremy knew that that wasn't realistic, but instead, the goal was to have the prisoners watch themselves. And the goal today of surveillance is not to track your every move. It's that in hopes that your behavior will change and conform. By striving to learn from multiple perspectives, acknowledging how your data is being used, and expressing yourself anyway, you can create a brighter future. In a world where your actions are predicted and tracked, freedom may no longer be about escaping observation. Freedom comes from knowing that you are being oppressed and overcoming it. To learn more about this topic, check out my website in the description of the video. It can tell you additional sources as well as things you can do to prevent your information from being stolen. Thanks for watching.